Back in early 2020, we were all sent home to work from home for a while, several months, many months, and I began to kind of vlog that experience. And then as it was apparent that it was going to take more than 2 weeks, decided I needed something else to do. I wanted to try something else. I'd heard about bucket gardens, so I built a bucket bleacher to hold my buckets and used it for several years to grow or try to grow things like tomatoes, peppers, onions, things like that, with varied success. And I say varied because I don't think we really understood the needs of soil versus, just buying a load of what they call soil at the organics place. While it looked good, it didn't have a whole lot of nutrients. It had some, and then the next year it didn't do quite as well, and so we made the raised bed, but continued on with the buckets as something to learn. And I think primarily what we learned is buckets are harder to do than planting in beds or in the ground. So now that I've got 3 full beds and a couple of smaller beds, what do I do with the bucket garden? Tried to give it to my sister, but it wasn't going to work for her and her schedule. Well, I've come up with an idea. So let's learn something. What is it that I'm going to do with this bucket bleacher, if not a bucket garden? So in looking around and realizing that soil was the problem I was having with the bucket garden, how about if I eliminate the soil and go to a hydroponic bucket system? That's what I have here. I watched some videos and read some things and looked around at the different options and figured out the parts and pieces that I could need. And then I said, how would I really want to do something like this, incorporating into the bucket bleacher? And I found this one from Viver. It has black buckets, which apparently is appropriate. It's got 4 buckets for plants, and it's got a reservoir bucket, which all fits in to the bucket garden pretty nicely. I looked around at, okay, what else do I need to do that? Well, I need pH. I need to be able to control the pH. So I got a pH up and a pH down. But I need to be able to determine what the pH is and the nutrient levels that are in it. So I got a pH and total dissolved solids meter that will help me monitor the nutrients and the pH of the water. And then you have to have nutrients. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. So I bought nutrients. What are these things? Yeah, they're different soluble nutrients. So let's open this thing and see what's in here. I haven't opened it yet. We're going to experience this together for the first time. I guess I should say that when I was looking at all the things I needed, I found I could buy all of this stuff independently. I didn't have to buy a kit. But this kit had almost everything that I needed, and I would have had to have bought separately. And this, while probably a little bit more expensive, meant I didn't have a whole bunch of orders and a whole bunch of other things coming in together. So open it up, and there's the bucket, a bucket, some buckets, a lot of buckets. Oh, and they're heavy. So everything must be in the buckets. Sure enough, everything's in the buckets. nothing left in the box. It's a nice box. Nice triple-walled corrugated box. So that's an honest-to-goodness lid with the pull tab around it. So it's like permanently closed if you shut it. There are 4 grow baskets, nice sized, large grow baskets. Wow, that's really heavy. This water supply line, look how thick that is. That's full 1/8 of an inch walled tubing. So this must be water supply. And then each of the grow baskets will get a ring. And these rings have little holes in them. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, for watering or sending nutrients into it. There's 4 of those, that's good. And then a smaller line, this might be water or this might be air, not sure. Power supply for the pump, that's going to be a little bit of a concern since I'm putting this outside. This is a little water level meter that you put into the reservoir so you can see how much of your nutrient solution is in there. I will assume this is the pump. This is the pump. More things. Let's see what's in here. So this is an air bubbler. Or maybe it's water pump. That's the water pump. Were you able to see that? Various fittings with valves so that you can drain or shut off a particular bucket. See if I can get one of these out. These are air stones because in each bucket there will be air bubbling up to provide oxygen. Air bubblers, or air stones, I suppose. And there's a lot of stuff in this. Little flow valves and other things that I will need to learn about. I'm hoping there's some kind of yeah, there is a document in there. Let's put that in there. Let's lay all this out. And there's a main valve. That's a pretty nice valve. Some more fittings. And an instruction book. In English. Cool. The buckets are pre-drilled. Hopefully I'm showing those to you. That's the smaller hole, the bigger drain hole. A bucket of clay pellets or beads or balls or whatever you want to call them that will go into each one of those. Oh, and these buckets are slightly different. So this bucket has 2 holes up here and 1 large one here. So for air, for the irrigation water, and for the return. And the rest of these buckets, I'll just assume, are the same. Let's make sure. Yeah. So there's a reservoir and then 4 grow buckets. So I've set everything out that came in the kit. It's got the reservoir bucket right down there. I put the lid on it. There's 4 grow buckets. There's 4 grow baskets and 4 bags of these clay balls. There's air line, there's different fittings and I don't know what you want to call them, sprinklers. It's a delivery water pump that circulates the water through the whole thing. This is the air pump. This thing is huge, but water is pretty important. More fittings, a valve, tubing, and an instruction book. That's what all came with the kit. In addition to the kit, I bought this stuff, the pH controls, the meters, and the nutrient pack. This is what's called a RDWC. I'm not a big fan of acronyms, but recirculating deep water culture is also hard to say. So I'll just call it a bucket, or Dutch buckets, or the bucket garden. Like I said earlier, the reason I bought this kit is I didn't want to collect all these pieces. I didn't want to spend all that time in my local home improvement store, trying to find exactly the right valves that I needed and exactly the right fittings that I could put through the holes. I could buy the black buckets. They're fairly expensive. I think by the time I added everything up, this just seemed like a better deal. Is it the best one? Probably not. Will it help me learn how to do this and see if it's any good and kind of send me on my way for doing some kind of hydroponic thing? Absolutely. And that's really what I'm wanting to do is learn about this and see how all of this works. And who knows, maybe it is the great thing that all of the YouTube channels seem to think it is. One thing you might notice I haven't mentioned yet is plants. I don't know what to do about the plants. We're a little late in the year to start them from seed. So I'm probably just going to buy some starts and rinse all the dirt off their roots and put them into the clay. Learning by trial and error. I did look that particular situation up, and while it's not ideal, sometimes that's what you've got to do. So I have no doubt there will be some learning that goes on. Oh, and I'm going to take you with me. It's okay. I was doing a little reading. I know, I'm surprised too, and thinking, shock, of the manual. And I discovered that their intention on how this should all be set up is just a little bit different than what I was wanting to do. So I had to do some more thinking, but they've intended for all the buckets, including the reservoir, to be on one level, like this. But I want to put it in a bucket bleacher so that I've got it like this. But that's the problem with that is the reservoir is pumping water into the buckets, and the buckets are then flowing out. And all the buckets and the reservoir would be kept at the same water level. And as the water depleted, they would all go down. Well, if I want to put mine in the bucket bleachers, I had wanted to put 4 buckets on the top layer and the reservoir on the bottom layer. And that may or may not work okay as long as the power on the pump stays running. But if it doesn't, all 4 planter buckets will drain into the reservoir bucket and overfill it. So I need to find a different way to put these in. And I considered a few things, but I figured I can do it like this. I'll show you. I've always had 4 buckets on this top row because the buckets that I was using before were more conical shaped. And what I realized is I've got space up here for 5 buckets. So now all of the buckets can be on the same level, and if the power goes off, they all just sit at their level that they are, instead of draining back into the reservoir. And I'll put all of the plumbing on this side so that the side that you're on will be pretty. And I have a couple of in-soil plants that I'll put down there, and who knows, maybe I'll buy another one of these systems if I like it and have 2 of them independent of each other. So that is the product of my thinking and reading on this. So I need to put this all together, and the parts and pieces that they provided are probably not exactly the way they would have provided them if they were going to do them all in a line like this. But I still think it's going to work. We'll give it a shot. Worst case scenario is I need to go up to a home improvement store and buy some different fittings or maybe some additional hoses. Different hoses, just because it might not be long enough. The unusual thing that I discovered about these is that everything is in that French standard measuring system rather than in the US standard measuring system. So I'm going to need to work with that, or I think you know, a 1/2 inch is close enough to 13 millimeters, and 3/4 of an inch is close enough to 19 millimeters to make all of this work. So let's plumb it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is do some assembly on the reservoir. The reservoir needs to have this big return system valve put in it. It sure seems a lot bigger than it really needs to be, but this is what they sent. If I was building all this from parts and pieces from a home improvement store, I probably would have done this a little differently. Oh, that's coming apart different than I thought it would. So this has got a bulkhead fitting and 2 seals for sealing them, not like so it kind of flattens the bucket out a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. That'll probably work. And then there's this sight glass for determining what the water level or the fluid level is in here. It's got a couple of little seals here. Yeah, it does. And then there's this little tiny ball in here. Little tiny ball. Not sure if you can see it or not. that needs to go in the top of it. And I suppose it does two things. One, it makes the height of the water a little bit easier to see, and it probably also keeps bugs from going down into it as it's moving around in there. So that's the first step to assembling the reservoir. And it's going to sit right there. Now the grow buckets, each grow bucket will have a return, goes back to the reservoir, and a water and a air, or water, air. I don't think it really matters. The air lines will go inside the bucket and bubble in the water, and then the watering line will just come up through and run the sprinkler. So they just have a grommet that will go into this hole here, and then this just presses in. Let's see if it just presses in. Yep. And then we'll connect the return lines on to this. So I'll tuck those in like that so that they're behind. I think I'm going to find a way to take the handles off these buckets. They're probably not all that necessary, and they kind of get in the way with how I'm putting this together. Okay. So the next step would be to cut the air lines and the water feed lines. So here we are behind the bleachers. Wasn't there a book about under the bleachers? And you can see I've got the main return to the reservoir and then the 4 buckets. And what I have is 4 of these T's that they engineered, 3 T's that they engineered to feed something like this. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to start the return water plumbing by taking this short piece that they gave me and attaching it to the main reservoir return. These all just, well, not all, but these particular ones are friction fit. The only ones that aren't are these bucket returns, which I think is interesting. Now, this, they say, can be hard to put on because they're not really, I don't think these are really the right size for these, but I think they'll fit. So that's what I wanted. I made this piece as far that way as I could. I really wish this was a smaller piece. They could have done it a little different, I think. But again, I'm modifying this plumbing to fit what I need it to do. So now I need to cut pieces that can go here to be out the same length as this one. So I've been doing a little bit of cutting and fitting off camera. And this is what I'm going to use for here. I had to put this long extension on it so that I could get it out to the length here, because I really can't make that any less. Okay, so then this will go like that. And then I'll do one for this bucket that does the same thing but in reverse. It's not exactly a hair dryer. It might work as one if your arm was long enough to keep it from melting your hair, but it worked really well. I heated it up and put some soap on it, and it slid right on very, very well. So now that I've experimented with it and figured it out, I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to turn the the heat gun on, and it's probably going to be loud. I'll heat it up lightly. You know, it never got real hot. I have to touch my face with it because I can't. I guess I could touch part of my arm. Then put the soap on it, and it slid right in. So I'll show you. I have the heat gun set to low. And it slid right on. Turn it to orient it like I like, and it's there. Now, I probably should have heated the other end at the same time, especially since it's a little too far away. Well, I might be able to make it work. I can feel it getting a little bit more pliable, and my hand getting a little warmer. Voila! This is all I have left, and it's not enough because I need to go around like this, which is what I did over here. I probably could have made this shorter so that this curved in this way and then turn that, and then I could have done something like that. I would have had a little bit more pipe left, but that's a little bit too fiddly. So I'll find, this is just under 5/8 of an inch inside diameter. So I'll find something else so that I can go around like that, just like I did over here. I think I found an option. I have this black poly pipe that I use for the drip irrigation. And it's about the same size. It's not as flexible as this, but you know, if you look at it, if you can see that, right? It's the inside diameter is about the same. Now the outside diameter of this stuff is much bigger, which I find very interesting. I've thought that was interesting since the beginning. The other thing that's weird is it smells like licorice. And when it gets warm from the heat gun, it even smells like it more. This poly is being so much stiffer and less flexible, doesn't want to go over the barbs without encouragement. So I'm going to encourage it with heat. I also got to try to make this corner without kinking it. I don't think it has to drain real fast, but I would just rather not kink it. I'd rather have everything nice and balanced. So I'm going to try heating this up and see if I can get it onto that. I'll turn you back on when I get to that point of trying to press it on there. It's pretty pliable now. Give it a little bit more. I'll get some soap on this. What happens is it gets pliable and it's hard to push without it wrinkling up. It is over 1 barb. Yeah, so now it won't go over another barb. It's over 1. I'll show you in a moment. Wow, it's already cooled off. Maybe I'll take that valve out and try to put it on. So I've been heating the other end up. It's pretty pliable. I'm gonna get it a little bit more. And then I need to shove it onto this thing and lock it down. Try a little soap. Okay, try a lot of soap. Okay, I'm gonna try that. It's over the barb, and I think enough of this coupler is gonna catch it. And now the whole thing is pretty stiff. I think that just might work. Everything's a little cattywampus. This is pushing everything, but once there's water in them, they'll should be a little bit more cooperative. Okay, that was fun. I think the poly pipe will work okay. I'm a little concerned about the bucket end of it because it didn't really go too far, but I think it went far enough over the barb that the compression fitting will lock down on it. We'll find out. I also did discover that putting a little bit more heat on this joint let me get it all the way on. So you can see it's not just 1 barb, it's all the way up. And that's the return water system. Now I'm going to have to do the supply water system. So the heat gun makes a big difference. If you decide to do this and it says, hey, you might make it easier with a heat gun, they're right. So just go slow, be careful, don't overheat it, don't melt it. You can melt this stuff. But getting it pliable sure made a big difference. And then when I heated that other one up to get it the rest of the way on, it did fine. So I might have cut it a little bit too long because everything's trying to torque around a little bit, but I put some heat into it and got it to relax a little bit. And if it doesn't behave itself, I can heat it up some more. Or I could take it off and put another piece in there or shorten that piece. So another step complete.